Good afternoon. The time is now 2:14. I would like to call this meeting of the Senate Standing Committee on Public Utilities, Transportation, and Communications to order. Buenas and half a day to my colleagues, representatives of government agencies, invited guests, members of the media, members of the public who have joined us today. This meeting has been duly noticed in accordance with Senate rules and the Open Government Act. The purpose of today's hearing is to receive testimony and to discuss matters pertaining to public utilities, transportation, communications, and related legislation currently before the committee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senator Ronnie M. Calvo.
Present.
Senator Manny Gregory T. Castro.
Estigap.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz.
Here.
Senator Jude U. Hofschneider.
Hey.
Senator Karina L. Magofnia. Senator Donald M. Manglonia.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, 5 members are present and 1 member is absent.
Let the record reflect that a quorum is present, and Senator Karina, Vice President Senator Karina, is excused from today's committee meeting. Members, you have received a copy of today's agenda. The chair will entertain any motion to adopt the agenda. It has been moved and seconded. Are there any objections or amendments? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. And now we'll move on to public comment. Before proceeding to new business, the committee will open the floor for public comment. Individuals who submitted requests to testify may come forward. When recognized by the chair, for the record, please state your full name, organization, and whether you support or oppose or wish to comment on any item on the agenda. We respectfully ask speakers to remain concise and focus on the legislation before the committee.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson, Vice Chair, and distinguished members of this committee. My name is Miranda V. Manglonia. I am a member of the Board of Directors of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony regarding measures affecting the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. At the outset, I wish to emphasize that CUC fully supports transparency, accountability, operational improvements, and responsible governance. As a public utility responsible for providing essential power, water, and wastewater services throughout the Commonwealth, we recognize our obligation to maintain trust while ensuring valuable and reliable, sustainable utility operations. However, after careful review, I respectfully submit testimony not in support of House Bill numbers 24-87 and 24-88, and Senate Bill numbers 24-58, 24-14, and 24-34, due to the significant financial, operational, and regulatory impacts these measures may further impose on the utility and ultimately the ratepayers of the Commonwealth. CUC continues to operate under extremely challenging conditions, including aging infrastructure, rising fuel and operational costs, federal compliance mandates, workforce limitations, and supply chain delays. Our greatest challenge today remains the ongoing recovery and restoration efforts following the devastation caused by Super Typhoon Sinlaku. We are deeply grateful to Guam Governor Lou Leon Guerrero and the Guam Power Authority for their immediate assistance and support in sending personnel to help restore power, water, and wastewater services to Saipan and Tinian. We recognize and understand the frustrations of our community and assure the public that CUC employees continue to work tirelessly under difficult circumstances to restore and maintain essential services. While these proposed measures are well-intentioned, several provisions may unintentionally create overlapping oversight requirements, expanded administrative burdens, mandated audits, reporting timelines, penalties, and procurement restrictions that could divert already limited financial and personnel resources away from critical infrastructure repairs, emergency response efforts, and essential utility operations. Of particular concern are provisions that may increase operational costs without sustainable funding resources, delay urgent procurement and infrastructure projects, weaken long-term financial planning and stability, limit the utilities' ability to respond efficiently during emergencies, and ultimately increase financial pressures on ratepayers. Although accountability measures and independent reviews can provide value, the cumulative impact of multiple mandates and recurring requirements may place substantial fiscal strain on the utility without directly improving service reliability or operational efficiency. Additionally, proposals involving deregulation or privatization require careful and comprehensive evaluation. Given the Commonwealth's unique geographic, economic, and infrastructure challenges, any restructuring of the utility system without sufficient safeguards may expose ratepayers to higher costs, service instability, and reduce public accountability. Likewise, suspending utility charges or limiting cost recovery mechanisms, though well-intentioned, could significantly impair CUC's ability to purchase fuel and materials, conduct critical repairs, and maintain federally mandated infrastructure improvements necessary to protect public health and safety. CUC remains committed to working collaboratively with policymakers, regulators, and the community to strengthen transparency, improve operations, and responsibly manage public resources. However, reforms affecting a public utility must also preserve the financial and operational capacity necessary to provide reliable and uninterrupted services to the people of the Commonwealth. For these reasons, I respectfully submit testimony not in support of House Bill, again, numbers 24-87 and 24-88, and Senate Bill numbers 24-58, 24-14, and 24-34 in their current form. Before I close, I like to quote words of a great president, JFK. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. So now I say this to you lawmakers. Ask what CUC can do ask not what CUC can do for the people of the Commonwealth. Ask what you as lawmakers can do for CUC and the people of the Commonwealth. Thank you for the opportunity to testify again.
Thank you, board member. Public comment is still open.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of this committee. I'm here to make a public comment in support of House Bill 24-87 and 24-88. So the reason why I support House Bill 2487 is because it benefits the whole community, because it is designed to make sure any CUC privatization, cessation, or public-private deal is not done blindly, cheaply, secretly, or in a way that leaves the public carrying the risk while private parties take the advantage. Its core purpose is to require independent valuation, restore oversight, modernize procurement protection, ratepayer protection, and ensure proceeds are used for infrastructure stability and relief. There is a law in the CNMI that pertains to where it should CUC be privatized, and it is Public Law 16-17. In Public 16 Law-17, there is a section in there that says that any privatization of CUC, whoever will be the bidder, okay, has to pay $250 million right off the bat. $250 million. We don't even know if it's actually worth $250 million. And then to make matters worse, you know, we have the CEDA dividends that any rightful, you know, minded investor is going to want to recover those costs. So if the cost that this law, Public Law 16-17, is already saying that anybody that is interested in purchasing, you got to pay up $250 million right off the bat. Okay? And then you add the CEDA $45 million, you know, dividends. Whoever wins this kind of privatization, you know, journey is going to want to recover that cost. And like I said, we don't even know if CEDA is actually worth 250, maybe more, maybe less, but we don't know. And reading Public Law 16-17, there was really no fair valuation as to why they came out with that number. There was none. So you cannot just tell somebody to go buy a Toyota and, you know, pay the price of a Mercedes. It just doesn't work that way. You know, and then of course you don't want to buy you know, everybody's going to want to buy a Mercedes at the price of a Toyota. So that is the reason why I'm in support of Public Law, you know, 24-87. On Public Law 24-88, an audit. The audit that is conducted right now, okay, it is only financial audit. It is not asset audit. It's not desk audit, not a procurement audit. It is a full-blown audit. And I have a legislation right now that is sitting in the House that the funding source for that audit, so that it doesn't have to be a pass-through through CUC, will be the CEDA funds. So the CEDA funds that they get from CUC is to fund the audit. And in that legislation, the commissioners are going to be the one that's going to be handling that funding, and to place those funds in an interest-bearing account. And hopefully, as the time goes by, the money that it earns in interest will wean itself from that CEDA fund. And then it goes back to normal. So there is funding that we can identify that could be used for auditing. In return, it will not be passed through to the ratepayers. And it's not taking money away from CUC's, you know, obligation. Okay? The legislation is already in the House, and I'm we'll be pushing that through. And I think that's the reason why I'm supportive of it, the 2488, and the funding will come from the CEDA fund that is already being taken out of CUC. And it's only rightfully so that the money that CUC collects from the ratepayer to pay CEDA dividends should go back to protecting the asset that belongs to the public, which is the utilities. It shouldn't go for anything else. You know, so all I'm asking is that, you know, give me time, get that legislation up here, and it will answer that question, that it's not taking any money from CUC, and it's actually protecting the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Aldon. The floor is still open for public comment.
Buenas tardes. Guaho si Rosman Blanco Santos Sort, member Zoloki, gi Board of Directors ECUC. No, rason na gagazo gini, presente na momento sa husosozo na komite na por favor, mga masapota siya na bill ni sinya aafekta i autoridad CUC ni esta gaigi ya reglamento gi lai. Esta naong bulaw maata lumiin na CUC, Hamzu, i administrasyon, i EPA, i DOG. Este siya na bill ni sinya masa na tsasaga itetsu ana mas gwagwan para i-ratepayers. Odds i-ratepayers, hagos and goes and tode ni manyasaga ginigi sangkatan na Islas Marianas. Imas maulik na asunto ipon ina pago i sinasagan itaw-tawta después di ipagdun sin loko. Bubula mantay kandit sa hafa taza sa lapit ni sinyo umazuda CUC paufahan i material ni manisisita pamanaon ni kandit pamabobombay hanum. Inigi anisita i CUC. Todi da manisita sa lapit lo todi da loki manisita kandit zan hanum. Sen kandit taza hanum. Tigas-gas si lugar. Ti maulik, ti safo. Este siya na legislation taliya. Disti malofan siya na tempon legislatura. Ginigis ang kata na Islas Marianas. Ata na ka natapuno i-retirement fund. Parewa ni este kwantos na legislation ma-introduce. Intensyon sinatasangan na malago pa majuda CUC. Lo tekniko man po sumbi utilities. Unisita engineering na hinaso. Puron atan yan siya na problema sa after mano sinyaw na juda. Muli nga zangin ilislitura i administrasyon zan itselutas Kimberly King Hines tafan matotsong zan itoto CUC za ta komprendi kabalis hafa magardi problema za hafa na manera sinya ta espiya ta ajuda sa zangin ta ajuda CUC ta ajuda itoto Marianas. Amin ni tataza kandid mami gigima. Lo incomprendia na tsasaga itempo. Guahad niya po na transformer po fanhalom idzigi gikinimprendek ko gimagad po manaon za naon siya kandid gisengsum. Lo gwa talo problema gi water pump. Sa ilik nga FEMA na pumatsulitati zunya genereta. Pispago na madisidi na ezi siya na transformer ni Manuebo pumapolo gato gi water pump. Za koskit afang gwagwa honum. Mas importante honum ki kandit. Todi da tumungan. Inigi ugagago ilislitura. Por favor, kintusi toto CUC fan matotsung zin fanakwentus zin fanakkumpendi afa magait imas maulik na tsalan pata falufani ta ajuda. Itaw tauta. Ginigita nota. Jesus masi.
Thank you, Board Member Sword. The floor is still open for public comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Ngo. For full transparency, I work at the Attorney General's office. CUC is one of the agencies that I advise. I also advise the Department of Public Lands, the Department of Public Works, and DLNR. I want to keep my public comment very limited. Just moments ago, Representative Aldon referenced Public Law 16-17. He brought up a very scary number. He brought up something about how independent power producers have to front the cost of $250 million, and that's I want to be very clear about what Public Law 16-17 says. Public Law 16-17 was passed in 2008. And let me go, oh, I know I lost this section. It says, this act shall authorize the full privatization of CUC, provided that any private entity that wishes to acquire CUC full privatization, shall pay a total of not less than $250 million in cash or in a combination of cash and equivalent infrastructure improvements. I want to be clear, there's no project currently before us that involves the full privatization of CUC. So this $250 million figure should not be a concern for you all right now. In addition, Public Law 16-17 was amended in 2011, 3 years later, by Public Law 17-34. And this Public Law 17-34 states that renewable energy projects shall be exempt from all provisions of this section. So any sort of partial or even full privatization of CUC, if it's a renewable energy project, it is exempt from the requirements of Public Law 16-17. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I am not at all in support of House Bill 24-87 in particular, because if you really read the language of that proposed legislation, it would require, before CUC is allowed to enter into any sort of power purchase agreement for renewable energy projects, solar or otherwise, it would require CUC to enter into some sort of comprehensive audit each and every time, not just a one-time audit, and then CUC can freely, invest in renewable energy projects that would benefit the entire CNMI. It would require each and every time CUC wants to enter into a power purchase agreement for solar or nuclear or whatever you're interested in, that some sort of expensive, comprehensive audit would have to happen. That's just going to kill the solar project, and it's going to prolong and possibly kill future renewable energy projects. I am fully in support of renewable energy, and I am not in support of House Bill 24-87. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is still open.
Hafaday, my name is Michael Ernest. I'm an attorney. I work for CUC. I'm generally not in support of any of the bills before the committee today. I'm generally in support of the thoughts behind them in principle, but in practice, I believe they could all be drastically improved with more work. And I'd be willing to help and provide my thoughts on them. But I would ask that they not be out of committee today. I agree with Attorney No's thought on the House bill regarding a comprehensive audit before any partial privatization of an IPP. I believe that's 24-87. I think it's really crucial to understand why the ongoing solar projects and alternative energy projects that CUC has before them. And I don't really know the details of them, but you all know how it is in Rhoda and Tinian. Right now, 100%, I believe, the generation is from diesel, and that has to be shipped through a port. And if the port is damaged or if the water is too rough, sometimes the diesel can't get there. So if we can't get you gas, we can't get you power. That's why it's important to diversify our generation options, and that's why I think it's very important that we get renewable energy to Rhoda and Tinian as soon as possible, just because I believe it's more difficult to get diesel fuel and more costly to get diesel fuel to Tinian and Rhoda. Again, I have picky problems with all the bills. I fully support personally, this is not on behalf of CUC, this is my own personal microness on behalf of me and my family. I do appreciate the thought to try and get cheaper water to the farmers. I'm from Wisconsin, that's a farming state. I support farmers 100%. I think the bill that's currently before the committee could really use improvement. I think that the rate of 25 cents per 1,000 gallons is woefully short and would absolutely require CPUC to raise water rates on everyone else. That's way less than the cost of generation. Also, that bill lacks any mechanism that stops someone from transferring, donating, or selling that water to other people. I know it seems silly, but if I had the Mog Ice and Water Company, I could just, under this bill, also get a farming license, and then I could get the water for 25 cents and then sell it, 25 cents per 1,000 gallons, and then I could sell it all. I think as currently constituted, a lot of these bills would either bankrupt CUC or certainly cause the inflation of rates to the consumer. And that's why I oppose all of them as they are currently drafted, although I do support the intent behind them, and I would be willing to help make them better in the future. Thank you. One more thing. Now is not the time for any of these bills, no matter if they're good or bad. I don't need to tell anyone about the super typhoon that just happened. I can tell you that one of your staff members asked me personally to hook them up, their power right now. And right now I can say I don't do that because I'm a lawyer, but imagine how I would have to say is CUC can't hook you up right now because we have to relearn the laws that the legislature just changed. I mean, you guys are considering changing the laws right now in the middle of a recovery effort. Every single one of the bills today before the committee has an effective date of immediately. They take effect immediately upon passing both House and the signature of the governor. And I think that's cruel and shocking that we would put our people through that. Changing the rules on CUC in the middle of a recovery is just, I mean, it's not for me to explain. It's respectfully, it's for you to explain. And I would ask that the committee consider, if it is intent on passing these bills, to have an effective date of 24 months. That will give CUC time to fully recover and to receive, hopefully, the reimbursements from FEMA and the other federal agencies. Right now, CUC is, I believe, fronting the cost of the entire recovery right now. So changing any of the rules in the middle of this right now is just a death sentence in my limited understanding to CUC. And I would ask the committee not to kill CUC. If many of these bills are passed, I believe there would be a federal takeover. And the very first thing the feds will do is increase the rates. And that's not me being hyperbolic. I believe that is a sober reflection of where we are right now. And I would invite our CFO or our executive director or anyone to challenge my opinion on that. I would love to be proven wrong. And if proven wrong, I will admit I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think if many of these bills are passed, that it's an automatic increase in rates. And I know my time is up, and I thank the committee for listening to my rambling. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Ernest, for your professional and personal statements. The floor is still open for public comment.
Hello, my name is Kevin Watson. I'm the Executive Director for the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity here today. I do oppose House Bill 24-87, House Bill 2488, and the House Bill 2458. The Commonwealth Utilities Corporation would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on House Bill 2487, also known as the CUC Independent Valuation, Oversight, and Ratepayer Protection Amendment Act of 2026, which is currently under consideration. This bill appears contradictory and counterproductive to House Joint Resolution 24-11, which directs CUC to expedite planning, permitting, and deployment of variable renewable energy projects. The passage of this bill would free CUC's current renewable energy initiatives, including CUC's solar farm project for Saipan, Tenya, and Rhoda, for however long it would take to complete the required independent valuation of CUC's assets, etc., potentially up to a year or more, in addition to what appears to be a required 90-day public comment period. CUC would miss key deadlines for renewable energy tax credits. Additionally, Section 10C would confer standing to almost every ratepayer to obtain review of an ongoing CUC procurement subject to this bill, or in other words, to protest the procurement. This would create massive administrative and legal burdens every time CUC attempts to enter into a public-private partnership or power purchase agreement, and would likely kill the RFP IFB project. This bill sends a confusing message and makes it unclear whether the legislature wants to expedite CUC's renewable energy initiatives or indefinitely delay and install them. Portions of this bill attempt to rewrite CUC's procurement regulations. The CNMI Constitution, Article X, Section 8, states that the CNMI Department of Finance, not CNMI legislature, controls the procurement of the expenditure of public funds. Accordingly, each agency's procurement regulations largely mirror the CNMI Department of Finance's procurement regulations. Any attempt by the legislature to rewrite CUC's procurement regulations by legislation is likely unconstitutional and an infringement on the Finance Secretary's constitutional powers and duties. This bill creates additional work, experience, and administrative hurdles on CUC without any appropriation. This bill amounts to an unfunded mandate, liability. The legislature is adding cost and not paying for them. The additional cost to CUC imposed by this bill, for example, the additional independent valuation required before CUC is allowed to enter into any public-private partnership or power purchase agreement for full or even partial privatization of its power, water, or wastewater services, will necessarily be passed on to ratepayers. For these reasons, and for additional reasons detailed by Section CUC, strongly opposes House Bill 2487. CUC offers following comments to the following specific section of the bill. Section 2, Findings and Purpose. It reads, the legislature finds a public law 1617, the CUC Private Sector Partnership Act of 2008, authorized the privatization and private sector participation in the operations of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, including the potential full privatization of its entire of the electric power generation operations. The legislature further finds that Public Law 1617 established a minimum consideration of $250 million for full privatization of CUC's electric power generation operations, but did not require any independent professional valuation of CUC's assets, liabilities, or projected revenues. Yeah, so. Okay. Yeah, just to save time of me reading all of this, I will present this to you in writing. I do strongly oppose 87. I do not want it to delay the solar farm project that we have in place, that we are currently negotiating and preparing a contract for, that we will be moving forward very soon with a vendor hopefully, and expects to be able to complete that project in 12 to 18 months, which will fall in line with the tax incentives. This will be a great benefit to CNMI and well as the CNMI customers to help control the rates and keep them lower and stable. It'll be unlike what we've just experienced with the doubling price of the fuel adjustment charge. This will help stabilize costs going forward for the next 20 to 25 years. And we are in a very good position now to make this happen. So again, I oppose House Bill 2487, House Bill 2488. And as far as the agricultural rate of 25 cents per 1,000 gallon, personally, I haven't seen rates like that for 50 years. And yes, I am over 50, and I have seen the price of water at where you could fill up a tanker for a quarter, but that was in early 1970s, and not today with the cost of power and labor at greatly higher prices than what we had in the early 1970s. So I do hope you consider that any putting a price of 25 cents for agriculture, yeah, it might help the food producers, but it's not going to help those producers when their water rates have to be increased to subsidize that cost for just a certain class of individuals or farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Watson. The floor is still open for public comment.
Good afternoon, Chairman of PUTC and members of this committee. Thank you for the opportunity for me to provide testimony today. Your agenda is quite lengthy with about 6 out of the 7 items being CUC, so bear with me as I share my testimony on those that I feel are would impact the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I will start with House Bill 2487. Because House Bill 2487 and 88 is similar, I will start with House Bill 2488 and then work to 2487. As the Chief Financial Officer of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, I strongly oppose this legislation in its current form and respectfully request that it not advance. At the outset, I want to make clear that CUC supports transparency, accountability, independent oversight, and audits. Audits are not only appropriate for a public utility, they are necessary for continuous improvements. CUC welcomes audits and regularly undergoes extensive review by independent auditors, regulators, federal agencies, grantors, and the federal court system. The issue before this committee is not whether CUC should be audited. The issue is whether the legislation provides any meaningful benefit beyond the substantial oversight that already exists. In my professional opinion, it does not. 1, CUC is already one of the most regulated public entities in the CNMI. The finding sections of the bill suggest that independent verification is needed to assess financial integrity, internal controls, asset management, procurement practices, billing systems, collections, operational performance. These functions are already reviewed extensively through existing mechanisms. Each year, CUC undergoes a comprehensive independent financial audit conducted by internal auditors in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards. These audits evaluate not only the corporation's financial statements, but also its internal controls over financial reporting and operational processes, including cash management, billing and collections, payroll, timekeeping controls, procurement, contract administration, accounts payable, disbursement of payable controls, accounting systems, financial reporting, inventory, asset management control, and compliance with laws, regulations, and grant requirements. These annual audits already identify weaknesses, deficiencies, and recommendations for corrective action. In addition, CUC finances are routinely reviewed by federal agencies and grantors. Federal funding agencies do not award tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure grants without extensive financial scrutiny and verification of internal controls. Furthermore, CUC is subject to regulatory oversight by the Commonwealth Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, which reviews rates, operations, financial information, and utility performance. Even more significantly, CUC currently operates under federal stipulated orders and judicial oversight. Every week, CUC meets with representatives of the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the United States Department of Justice regarding compliance obligations and operational performance. On a biannual basis, CUC participates in court proceedings in which a federal judge reviews progress, compliance status, finances, collections, operations, accomplishments, deadlines, and corrective actions. CUC is already required to satisfy numerous court-ordered milestones and reporting requirements under strict timelines. There are very few public utilities in the United States that experience this level of scrutiny. 2, the bill is largely duplicative of existing audits. A review of the proposed audit and scope reveals substantial overlap with work already performed through annual financial audits, federal compliance reviews, grant oversight, CPUC oversight, court monitoring, and operational reporting requirements. The legislation would require examination of cash management, accounts receivable, billing collections, payroll, procurement, contracts, inventory, capital projects, internal controls, asset verification, and operational metrics. These are precisely the types of areas already examined through existing audit and compliance processes. Rather than generating new information, this legislation would largely require CUC employees to repeatedly gather, organize, and reproduce information that has already been reviewed by auditors, regulators, federal agencies, and the courts. The result would be duplication of effort, not improved governance. 3, the costs will ultimately be borne by ratepayers. The bill requires CUC to fund the audit and all associated compliance requirements using utility revenues. This means ratepayer dollars would finance the independent utility audit, asset validation efforts, public dashboards, corrective action reporting, CPUC proceedings, legislative reporting, quarterly progress reports, and ongoing compliance administration. The legislation contains no appropriation and no external funding source. Consequently, the cost will ultimately be borne by utility customers who are already facing significant financial pressure. At a time when CUC is focused on restoring aging infrastructure, improving reliability, maintaining regulatory compliance, and managing recovery from the recent disaster, directing scarce resources toward duplicative administrative exercises is difficult to justify. And even if there were appropriations, 4, the bill diverts critical staff from core operations. The greatest cost of the bill may not be financial. The greatest cost would be the diversion of limited personnel resources. CUC currently faces significant workforce challenges. Many employees already perform multiple functions due to staffing shortages and recruitment difficulties. Implementation of this legislation would require hundreds and likely thousands of staff hours devoted to assembling records, responding to auditors, preparing reports, maintaining dashboards, responding to inquiries, participating in hearings, and managing compliance activities. Every hour spent supporting duplicative audits is an hour not spent restoring infrastructure, responding to customers, repairing systems, improving reliability, securing grants, or advancing capital projects. This legislation risks creating additional administrative burdens without producing corresponding public benefit. 5, the penalty provisions are extraordinary and potentially unconstitutional. Perhaps the most concerning portion of this legislation is Section 111, The bill imposes personal civil penalties on executive leadership and designated employees for missed deadlines, regardless of whether delays arise from circumstances beyond their control. The legislation authorizes penalties against named individuals, requires public designation of responsible parties, and prohibits reimbursements by the utility. These provisions are highly unusual in utility governance and raises serious legal concerns regarding due process, fairness, and lawful imposition of personal liability on public servants performing governmental functions. The CNMI already possesses oversight mechanisms, legislative authority, regulatory authority, and judicial remedies. Creating personal financial penalties against utility employees and executives is unnecessary and risks discouraging qualified professionals from serving in leadership positions, which is already very difficult enough as it is. The practical effect would be to punish individuals for attempting to manage one of the most complex public enterprises in the Commonwealth. 6, the bill appears designed to find fault rather than improve performance. Constructive oversight should focus on helping public institutions identify weaknesses, implement improvements, achieve measurable progress. Unfortunately, the structure and tone of this legislation suggests a fundamentally different objective. The legislation presumes failure, imposes punitive deadlines, establishes automatic default mechanisms, triggers oversight hearings, restricts management actions, and creates personal financial penalties. These provisions are not designed to strengthen collaboration between policymakers and utility management. They are designed to create punitive consequences. CUC does not object to audits. We object to legislation that creates redundant oversight structures, diverts limited resources, increases costs to ratepayers, and imposes punitive requirements that do little to improve service delivery. In conclusion, CUC remains committed to transparency, accountability, continuous improvement, and responsible stewardship of public resources. However, House Bill 2488 is unnecessary because the corporation already undergoes extensive independent audits and regulatory review. It is duplicative because it requires examination of areas already subject to annual audit and federal oversight. It is costly because ratepayers will ultimately bear the financial burden. It is operationally disruptive because it diverts scarce personnel resources from essential utility functions. And it is concerning from a legal and public policy standpoint because it is unprecedented personal penalty provisions. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to reject House Bill 2488 and instead focus on policies that strengthen utility operations, improve infrastructure reliability, support workforce development, and provide CUC with the flexibility necessary to operate in a business-like manner for the benefit of the people of the Commonwealth. Chairman, may I continue?
Please proceed, CFO.
Thank you. House Bill 2487. As Chief Financial Officer of the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, I respectfully oppose this legislation and urge the committee not to advance the bill in its current form. Again, at the outset, I want to emphasize that CUC supports transparency, accountability, public oversight, competitive procurement, and prudent stewardship of public assets. These are the principles that CUC already follows and that are embedded with our governance structure, regulatory oversight, federal court oversight, annual audits, and procurement procedures. I will submit this in writing, so I'll skip over some of the details since it's similar to House Bill 2488. The bill is substantially similar to 2488, so I'll move on to one of the key things. The bill threatens the CNMI solar farm project. Perhaps the most immediate concern is the impact this legislation could have on the utility-scale solar and battery energy storage project that is currently nearing contract award. The project represents one of the most significant opportunities in the Commonwealth's history. 2, reduce fuel consumption, lower exposure to volatile global fuel prices, improve energy security, increase renewable energy generation, reduce long-term operating costs, improve system reliability, and move the Commonwealth closer to its renewable energy goals. The procurement process for this project has already involved extensive technical review, financial evaluation, legal review, stakeholder participation, and regulatory oversight. The project is now approaching a critical stage. Enacting this legislation that creates new evaluation requirements new review procedures, expanded protest rights, additional procurement requirements, and new approval process at this late stage creates substantial uncertainty. This practical effect could be delayed contract award, procurement challenges, increased financing costs, loss of bidder interest, withdrawal of proposals, delays in project construction, increased project costs, and loss of anticipated fuel savings for ratepayers. The Commonwealth cannot afford to jeopardize one of the most important energy projects currently under development. 3, every month of delay costs ratepayers money. 4, CUC is already subject to extensive oversight. 5, the independent valuation requirement creates unnecessary delays. 6, expanding standing invites litigation and procurement delays. 7, the bill sends the wrong message to investors and developers. Private developers, lenders, investors, and infrastructure partners seek certainty. The more uncertain and unpredictable the procurement environment becomes, the fewer qualified firms will participate in Commonwealth projects. Developers will either increase their pricing to account for risk, require higher returns, delay investment decisions, or decline to participate altogether. Ultimately, these costs are borne by the ratepayers. The Commonwealth should be encouraging competition investment, not creating additional uncertainty. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to reject House Bill 2487 and allow CUC to continue advancing critical infrastructure projects that will benefit ratepayers and the Commonwealth as a whole. May I continue on the other bills? Or would you like me to just submit?
CFO, we actually have a dedicated time on the agenda for CUC and the CPUC. So
Okay.
if you want to save it for that segment, and then also you can submit it so that way we can.
Yes.
But I'll leave that up to you. Would you like to would you prefer to save it for that part of the agenda?
I'm okay. I didn't know there was a part for that, but sure, I don't mind saving it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, CFO.
Okay, thank you too.
And public comment is still open. If there's anyone else, sure.
Not
Recognize Senator Hofschneider,
may I?
Vice Chair.
It looks like it's what you just said to the CFO is probably going to apply also to, no disrespect to Chairman Angelo, Dr. Angelo, but if we want to have like an open discussion with all the bills, is that okay?
Can I get a motion?
But I think the gentleman wants to offer comments. We'll wait for him. Yeah. No, I'm just under consideration of the time and all you guys. So thank you. Yeah. Of course. Thank you, Chairman.
much needed power for all their daily lives and businesses and uses. The legislature also deals with very complex community issues. So we have these complex issues coming together, and I, for one, go back to the day I was sworn in 2023 in front of two fine political leaders, rest in peace, Arnold Palacios and our current governor, Governor Apatang, that I swore to do my best to create fair and reasonable prices for the ratepayers. And that boils down simply to regulate the CUC as not a punishing type of a commission, but oversight. And we all need oversight. The ratepayers, we tend to advocate for them. And there's a slight difference. We don't favor either side more than the other. There's a balancing act. And it's to make sure that these fair and reasonable rates reach the public. In the matter of an audit, one of the first things I did in 2023 is I approached OPA because the CUC, other utilities, they were working under a dormant public utilities commission for approximately 10 years. And everybody was asking, even bless his soul, Governor Palacios, could we get a clear picture of CUC? And I felt the best way would be having an audit, comprehensive, not complex, but simple, comprehensive of the financial, desk, and procurement practices to get a good picture of what's been going on for the previous 10 years and for the upcoming 5 years or more. And when I submitted my official request to OPA per the legislation that was enacted for the Public Commission to be formed, it says they shall perform an audit on any utility entity that we so desire. They came back saying they were too busy, and I acknowledged they were shorthanded, but it also says in the same bill they can go to an outside source, private sector, pick a private auditor, and we would be in the discussions to approve that, and an audit would be done, and CUC would bear the cost. And we wanted a fair, again, and reasonable audit, and not at a sky-high price, thinking of the financial burdens that CUC faces. But this never came about. 2024, I again put in a letter. They said they needed a year to think about it, and again, they said they were too busy. So this information got to the legislature, and I believe this is what started this now 3 to 4 bills about wanting this big audit. And it's like somewhat of an overlap. When things don't happen, laws that are already on the books that would provide this information, there's new legislation on top of the old legislation that creates an overlap. And I think everybody can understand that. And it causes confusion for both CUC and the ratepayers. I do believe in the intent of Chairman Aldan trying to get answers, and I respect that. But I tend to hesitate that the commission has to do a formal audit and be very strict about it when already in our Enabling Act we are allowed to do that. So what I would like is that everybody consider to keep things simple. It's an old expression, especially if you're dealing with complex issues, you still have to keep things simple. So where people feel they're treated fairly and CUC is given a chance under their law to operate on full recovery. So there's a balancing act. The latest audit of CUC states that they're improving, and I appreciate that. The one big weakness is procurement, and that's mainly our focus. When I've been on the commission, along with the team that I really appreciate working with, we've been focusing on procurement. That's how you get things to help things work, and that weakness has to be strengthened, and I think CUC would admit to that. Other than that, I do hold Saipan very dear to my heart, and I've created a family out here. I've been here 48 years, and I consider it my true home with the people that live here. And there's so many different types of people here, and to get a common ground is a challenge. But I trust, I've known most of you, that there is a common ground that can be attained. And with that, I will stop and allow this meeting to proceed with the time that my good friend Senator Jude would like to spend on these other matters on the agenda. Thank you, and I wish you all well, and even the people behind me.
Thank you, Chairman Angelo. And if we could get a motion to, is there still anyone else that wanted to give public comment? Okay, we're gonna close public comment. And if I could get a motion just for the, since I think we were already diving into the discussion with invited guests.
Mr. Chairman, just go on item 7. Just move on to item 7.
Is there a second? Any objections? Okay, so we'll go ahead and proceed to item 7 on the agenda, discussions with invited guests. And the chair now recognizes, if there's additional, chair now recognizes representatives from the CPUC.
Mr. Chairman, do we invite them here on the?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yes, sir. Recognize Senator Jude,
And
Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, do we ask the board of CUC also, or the management to join us, or? I mean,
I
I'm
think
assuming
we-
that this is an open discussion, correct, or are we just gonna do?
Yes,
one-
yeah, Vice Chair, so on the agenda, we have CPUC, then CUC,
Okay.
but we can put them together if that's what you're,
No, I'm just checking because I don't want to derail
okay.
your
So
the
we will
agenda,
just,
which you already. But in the interest of time, and I think there's a lot of comments that are made that are very important to get more clarity on some of the bills, so that we enable the members to support or not to support, or ask for more comments from respective entities. That's where I'm treading to.
so that's a motion.
If so ordered, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if there's
is-
no objections, we'd like to invite CUC up to join the CPUC. All right.
Objection, Mr. Chairman. Can I request for a short recess also?
Short recess.
Thank you.
We've got a motion to move to item 7 on the agenda. Discussions with invited guests, and I would like to recognize our Vice Chair, Senator Hofschneider, to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, folks. I'm just gonna jump right in. 24-02. I want to jump right in there because it's on the old business, and meaning it's near markup. But I recognize some of the concerns raised by Mr. Watson and Attorney Mike Ernest. I do want to continue to ask that, you know, my job as a public servant is to always look for ways to not only this particular legislation, but also make it affordable for our producers and ranchers and farmers to continue doing so. One of the biggest gripe is the lack of rates, and I do understand that there is a law right now that establishes the water rates, and it actually asks CUC to promulgate rules and regs, primarily for CMC subsection 8182 and 8183. That's a segment of that particular law that mandates or allows you guys, CUC, to promulgate the rules and regs to carry out the intent of that particular law since the 14th legislature. My view is because of the lack of prioritization, or because it was not promulgated for years. That's the reason why I introduced this to mandate that specific rates already, to establish it for the utilities instead of asking you to establish it already by regulation. So I'm open to always, you know, retract my legislation, but I think, all due respect, every year that we meet with CUC, it's always the water loss situation. You know, there's a lot of leaks elsewhere, and that accounts for, you know, of course, the quantification of the rates eventually for the consumers. So it's kind of a cycle of reasoning that we always hear from the utilities. And I know you guys are trying, but it doesn't negate the fact that I have to also, we have another component of constituents that are in this area of ranching, food, you know, farming and ranching, and I believe more than ever, given the volatility of everything that's happening around the world, I think we need to support our ranchers and farmers and make sure that we have food, and when the next big thing comes around, you know, we can't keep depending on importation of meats when we can actually produce here, of poultry when we can actually produce here, green leafy products when we can actually produce here, so that we can, you know, assist our people by you know, growing local products, not supplanting the importation, but supplementing some. So a good lesson was COVID, when we closed the borders, and then Sinlaku, the latest one. A lot of I'm not sure if any of you experienced, but sometimes they go to the stores and they ran out of this, they ran out of that. We could easily be producing here. You know, at one point in time, I'm sure you guys heard, the 1 dozen of eggs was what, almost $12 to $15 or something. That's not, you know, that's not we shouldn't take that very lightly. But if we support our poultry producers here to raise animals, and one of them is perhaps the cost of water, so that they can continue on and, you know, remain in the business of producing such, you know, I think we're doing our people justice. So that's what this whole spiel of Senate Bill 24-02 in a nutshell. And I'm ready to get off my soapbox, because I think you know what I'm talking about already. So I respectfully ask that the current law, look at it one more time and come up with a regulation, work with the CPUC to establish that, because everything is, you know, cycle. And yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then anybody can open, you know, and can answer to me.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on, the agricultural. We've had several standpipes that's been providing free water to the farmers for years. And we've also had several thefts of our water, with piping going hundreds of feet to hundreds of yards, irrigating large farms that are now being investigated by DFIM and being prosecuted by the AG office. So I agree that we need to come up with a rate that's affordable for the farmers. So maybe then we'll have less theft. That is happening here. We've got videos of it. I've seen it with my eyes. Judge Carter has seen it, and he is adamant that we stop the thefts of water. That's a big portion of our non-revenue water, and this island can't afford that. And so we are taking steps to control that, doing more audits of our system, and investigating areas where water's going. And when it's found, we take the evidence and cut and cap. But yes, there needs to be a mechanism, and we are putting in our present rate petition to the CPUC.
Thank you, Director. If I may respectfully suggest, because Rhoda and Tinan is pretty reasonable sized community, and you can actually, deploy some of these as a pilot project, notwithstanding our operators here in Saipan as well. But start with that aspect, same to that of what you were deploying earlier as far as the renewable energy. So I'm not going to tell you what to do on how you want to roll this out, but I can only encourage you to prioritize a regulation to allow for special rates. And if there's a need to tweak the law as it currently is, this is a good vehicle to do it. This one is, and I understand, there's a great concern, but we cannot forget the other equation, the other side of the coin, where really it's our people that we're trying to help. So that's what my ask is today, and I'm glad that the commissioners are here to listen to this discussion, and I will not go further than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jude, sitting in for the chairman. Recognize the council for CUC.
Thank you. Now I have to say that as counsel for CUC, I don't support farmers as much as I did personally. CUC can only do the rates that the CPUC allows them to, and I can tell you that the rates, at least from CUC's point right now, are very low. We're under recovering, and we do have a petition before the CPUC to increase rates over a 5-year period. Presently, 10,000 gallons of water at our cheapest rate would be $51.54. Under the bill, we would only be able to charge $2.50. So we would be losing $49.04 if this bill were to pass. Again, CUC is definitely going to strenuously object to being forced to sell at below market or below recovery rates. Guam has economies of scale much higher than ours, much better than ours. My present understanding is that we will never be able to have rates less than Guam. And if Google is to be believed, Guam's rates for $1,000 of agricultural water is $7.03 per $1,000 per 1,000 gallons. So necessarily, CUC's rates would have to be, just from my understanding of how economics works, it would have to be higher than $7.03 per 1,000 gallons. Whether or not there is a price discrimination allowed, again, CUC's efforts have been trying to stabilize prices amongst commercial and residential and government. Because when we have differences, we realize that the government says, okay, charge us more, and then they never pay their bills. And so we end up having to hit the consumer. CUC's position has been trying to just flatten out the bills so residential and consumer and government are all the same. And I believe that's what is in our petition before the CPUC right now, and that's what they'll be considering. So officially, CUC's position is to try to not discriminate amongst different classes of ratepayers. If forced to do so by the law, of course, CUC will follow the law. But just again, the problem is when we do make these discriminations, people take advantage of it. That's why one way to approve this, again, I'm not the decider, but one way to approve 24-02, in my opinion, would be to ensure that the water that is this lower rate cannot be transferred or donated or sold or given to anyone else, that it must be used exclusively for agricultural purposes by that person. Again, right now, if I'm a water company, I can just get a farm license, and then I get water for 25 cents per 1,000 gallons. I know that's not the intent of this law. That would be a gross misuse of the law, but that would be legal under this law. So that's a huge loophole that we would definitely want changed. And you will hear, oh, by the way, I do need to correct my previous testimony. I don't have any, I said I disagreed with every law before the committee, or every bill before the committee. I don't have any problem with the jaywalking bill. No opinion on that. I'm anti-jaywalking. But all bills that we would ask that would be not to take immediate effect, we would ask that every bill before the committee either not advance, or if they do advance, we would ask for time before implementation kicks in, at the very least 18 months and preferably 24 months. This will allow us to get through the recovery and to actually recover. At our last meeting, the CFO told us, and if she's to be believed, and of course she is, but if I heard correctly, CUC will have $2,000 come August. So any bill you do that gives us more than $2,000 is going to put us into insolvency. And obviously things would have to go very, very wrong, but that was the number she told us in the meeting yesterday. So I would encourage you to ask her about CUC's financial position. She gave a report to the board. The board has stated on the record that we're very happy to give those executive director and CFO reports to our regulator and to every stakeholder. As a matter of course, all they have to do is ask, even if they don't want to ask, I'm happy to give it to Attorney Cyrock to forward to the CPUC. But that's the number that shocked me and it scared the hell out of me, frankly. Come August, CUC's cash will be $2,000 if nothing changes. Was I incorrect on that? At the end of August, $2,000. So every cost, and I believe there was a member of CPUC who heard that. So, and he knows more about money than I do. So maybe he can say whether I'm remembering correctly. But again, this isn't academic. Every cost that this committee imposes on CUC gets us closer to insolvency. And when we are insolvent, we get taken over by the feds, and the first thing they do is raise rates. Again, this is not hyperbole. So this is why I would ask that we be given time for any changes before they get kicked in. And I would ask that the committee consider very carefully giving any additional costs to CUC at this time. Thank you.
Could I just make a comment? Why you're so sure the feds would raise the cost of rates? You're saying it over and over again. You guarantee if the feds took over CUC, they would automatically raise the rates. What's that based on?
Because
any other examples?
My guess is that the feds would not operate at a loss and that they would charge the true cost. Our position is that we're not currently charging the true cost. That's why we're seeking a rating increase. So if the world works the way I assume it does, and again, I concede I cannot see into the future, sir. So
I think the feds would be a caretaker until they found a solution, like a private company or something along those lines. I just don't like the scare factor sometimes that's thrown out, because this gets out to the public and they suddenly are running around that CUC is going to go under in August 1st, and then what happens? all the power plants, shut off and et cetera, et cetera. So again, as a regulator, we want to deal with numbers all the time and back up with examples and sources to make these things fully transparent. I know there is problems financially, but we want the whole picture, which goes back to the audit situation, and of getting a whole across the board picture. So again, I hope it doesn't come to that, and so again, we'll see.
I think you have the floor now, Chairman.
Okay.
Just have
I
to
believe
recognize.
CFO Betty, was it, or who was first? Sorry, I just came in back.
Apologize. As a student of economics, right, there's always going to be a question on how we consider these decisions now, right? If you're looking to make sure a resource, right, like water, which is very difficult to replenish on a coral island, right, is used properly, right, price is one of those factors. You bring things to a very low number in terms of price, people usually consume and do not take care of their consumption levels, right? And that's one of the things that we have to balance here. So if price is a factor in terms of usage and how people use it, we have to understand that if we decrease price in order to stimulate a certain segment of our industry, that return, right, on that investment that you're making is significant. And that's one of the things that we need to think about towards the future. Are the decisions we're making? Granted, I would like to make sure that, these decisions come within the context of global change, right, in climate, right? So we don't know how water is going to be sustainable in the Marianas in the long term. Number two, we don't know, right, how much of a stimulus decreasing water will be. And then, of course, number three, right, we want to make sure that the areas in which we put our efforts is going to yield an economic impact, right? We want to make sure the finite resources that we have is going towards an industry that's going to give us economic development and economic impact. At the end of the day, we want money to circulate in the CNMI, and we want growth in the CNMI, right? So I want to make sure that the people are considering the long-term impact here of how pricing, right? If pricing is going to be used as a stimulus to develop a certain industry, that our return is significant, because it might cost us quite a bit if we don't understand how water is being replenished in an economically developing area. Tinian, for example, it has economic development in terms of the military buildup and other businesses that want to do business on Tinian. How much water is available? All of those questions are kind of difficult to answer. And if we're going to go ahead and lower costs in terms of water consumption, that's a unforeseeable point in time. We can't foresee these things, and I want to make sure that we take very, very careful steps when we're trying to get economic stimulus through pricing. I apologize there if I wasn't clear enough, but.
I just make clear that I was an English major, so please don't trust me when it comes to money. And if it felt like what I was saying was scary, if I was wrong, please correct. We have our chief financial officer sitting right here, so if you have any questions about CUC's financial situation, which I would personally describe as somewhat precarious at the moment, not to scare anybody, but I mean, I've been here since September, and all I've heard is that we've been under recovering for like 12 years, and that we've been operating in a loss. And I don't hear the word profit ever. I hear what our loss was. And so please ask our CFO what our economic situation is. And if I could just complain about one thing, it's this. again, I haven't been doing this a long time, but Senator Hofschneider talked about the $15 at Joten, and that was real. That was the cost of eggs. That was that was economics. There was a big cull of the chickens in the mainland, and that the cost of eggs was $15 a dozen. No one complained about Joten. No one said that Joten should be regulated. No one offered to take over or audit Joten because of the cost of eggs. But gas goes up, and suddenly that's CUC's fault. Gas goes up because there's a war and the Straits of Hormuz are closed, and suddenly it's somehow CUC is mismanaging things, and CUC is evil, and CUC is sitting on money, and CUC is lazy, and if we just audited CUC, we'd have the FAC a lot lower, and that's just not what I'm seeing, and so excuse me for being defensive, but that's what my life has been since certainly March. I would just like to state my gratitude that we are sitting here civilly, and the committee does seem very receptive to our concerns. But please ask Chief Financial Officer Terlaje about CUC's finances, and hopefully that will inform the committee's decisions going forward about how much regulation you want to add and how much cost you want to add to CUC right now in the middle of a recovery. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to CFO since she's been raising her hand for a while, and then we'll go back to.
Just before we go on to another bill, 2402, since this bill was drafted a while ago, may I ask what the research is behind it? Do you know how many farms we have on the islands of Saipan, and Rota, and how much water is used per area? I don't know how the measurements are, if it's by square feet or square yards. It's that way we could perhaps propose or suggest, what the cost would be for water, and maybe perhaps, if there's some kind of subsidy too, we could make that recommendation should you identify funding or some agricultural grant to help farmers. I mean, we're not opposed to helping farmers. We just have to make sure we have the rates in place for farmers that would be affordable, at the same time be able to cover the cost of supplying water to farmers who would in turn provide economic benefits to the CNMI plus to the community for organic food too, right, or something like that. But if you could share the data behind it, that will help us put these numbers together and be able to work with our consultants to see, and perhaps see if there's other grants that could help subsidize these costs for agricultural purposes.
Certainly. Thanks for that suggestion. I will work through my office for all three islands and see if they can coordinate with the organization that they've been. I think you see them over at the fishing base and sometimes over in Susupi, and then some on Tinian and Nomroda. So I think it's important that we get directly from them.
Yes.
What better time to do it than the next few weeks to meet with the organizers or the organization. And I think it's good to have an open dialogue with them and also allow them to understand the challenges that the utilities and the point that Commissioner Mendiola is alluding to. So we don't want to just do a feel-good rate just for now, and then we forgot the long-term viability and making sure that we also understand how much water supplied we have on all three islands. It's very distinct. The all three islands is very different, and that's the reason why I think it's important to allow for them to participate in that forum. I, for one, I can't tell you that off the bat right now. I just advocate for such consideration. And again, this 24-2 is a legislation. There is a law already that allows for rates. So, I can recommend to the chairman that we file this bill today for the interest of getting to the next step. But let's have that meeting first, no?
It would be a great concern for if that bill was passed and we weren't prepared to absorb.
And that's why we're having this discussion.
Yes, and absorb, so working collaboratively. Just as well, we have a Department of Agriculture here. Perhaps they can help get the grant to subsidize farmers, that if it was put into the system, we'd be able to reduce the rates for farmers, and then it would be affordable. And having affordable rates for farmers is a concern of mine, because I think that might also deter theft, because now they can afford it and they don't have to go figure out another way to get water, because I believe that's why there's a lot of theft, because the water is so expensive, so they do it illegally until they get caught, right? That might be one deterrence to prevent that, but just doing it outright without a plan or having a rate case study done on it would be a concern, because then we'd have to find the funding elsewhere if it's not in our rates.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add on, just to at the defense of the author, I mean, again, like you said, this has been a law since the 13th legislature, but we've never heard or seen anything come out from this from CUC. It's a very small change to the current law, what Senator Drew's proposing, but maybe something that we can also look at while getting that information is maybe starting with a tiered system. Let's set a rate for the first 2,000 gallons, and then from then after, that way we won't see a lot of abuse from the larger commercial farmers, and allow for the small scale families to start their farming and see if that's a viable option to sustain their livelihood, or even for food security, right? A lot of our people in Rhoda, at the very least, have pipes going to their farms without any infrastructure, in hopes that they can start farming. But with the current rate, they don't know if they can be able to sustain the cost of farming activities, and also selling these products. But if we can start small scale and then see how it works, then that would be one option. But maybe with you guys, with CUC, determining whether a discounted rate for the first X amount of gallons could work out. What would the loss be there if we have even you can even get the data from finance, right? How many people are commercial farmers? But I think that rather than having to wait, it's been a long time coming since the 13th legislature, where the author is shedding light on this issue that hasn't been addressed since then. And so if we were to act on this today, what would that figure look like? What would that agreed upon cap would be before we start charging the current rate today? If that's something that we can get from CUC and hopefully discuss at our next meeting, which I think we will also take up the rest of the bills, because I don't think the committee will be ready to act on 87 or 88 today even, given that you guys are now submitting comments. But can I ask, when this was in the House committee, was CUC called to testify on these bills? Were you invited to provide any comments?
At the last minute, you submitted some comments, right? But the day that they put it on, we were not informed about it till after.
So with that understanding, I would suggest to the chairman that we table at least the first two bills to digest the information that you guys have provided the committee today, as well as provide any additional amendments should any of these bills go through, despite, other than the changing of the effective date. If there are any other portions within the bills that you feel is just it's just something that CUC can't manage at this time, then we'd be happy to hear from you guys. I yield at this time, Chairman.
Dr. Angelo, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add some clarity here. I started here in 2023. I was told, I wasn't here at the time, but that we'd only had 24-hour water to our customers for 5 years, let alone farmers. Most of your big farms here, we don't have water pipes going to. I was asked to help one of our road projects to if CUC would partner with DPW and put a water line in. They said, oh, the legislature's provided $200,000. How much will it cost? The engineering estimate of the cost is over $4 million. Did we put that pipe in? No, we couldn't. If you pass this legislation for 25 cents, how are we going to get the water to the farmers at a cost of $4 to $4.5 million per mile when there's no pipe going to these farmers? So, are you just going to give the farmers that are adjacent to current pipes that we struggle now to keep water flowing to our community and our homes and businesses? So that's something we need to think about. I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, in Missouri. We didn't irrigate our crops. We waited for the rain to fall, and the crops grew. And you get more rain here than what we got in Missouri.
Wisconsin boy here. It's the cattle that require the dedicated water. Cows drink a lot every day. So this would predominantly be for the cattle growers. My question, Senator, would be by when would the committee want our proposed changes? Next week is very busy for me, certainly. We have an oversight meeting from CPUC and other things. So if I could have a date beyond next week for proposed changes to this and all the other bills, I would endeavor to get those to the committee as soon as possible.
I think we'll leave that up to the chairman in terms of how much time the committee would need also to, again, digest the information, the comments that we've received from you guys today. Again, this is our first time hearing of it and seeing it. We did not see any in the House report, which is why I asked that question. And so as soon as the chairman calls for that meeting, and I think he'll let the entities know when that is, and that'll give you time to prepare whatever amendments you may have on any of the bills aside from the 2402. Thank you.
So I recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all CUC and I don't know, I saw one CUC Board of Director earlier testify, and I just want everyone to know, I know you've been here in the legislature, Councilor Ernest, that every legislation that is introduced by a member of the House or the Senate is not coming personally from the individual. It's coming from the general public. So that's why I continue to ask that CUC should, because the situation, I know that it was mentioned whether it's a good bill or not, or a bad bill, and the situation we're having right now with the fuel costs and the Senlaku recovery is costing CUC a lot of money, right? And I know CUC is not supporting any of this CUC bill that that we're entertaining today. But this is why I always ask CUC to be, because you mentioned that I know that you guys are transparent with in regards to regulatory body, whatever that it's supposed to be, right? You guys are transparent. But the thing is, the people should know. It's not enough with one newspaper about CUC is bleeding and is not fixing the problem. But the people out there don't completely understand what's the meaning of that. I think and I appreciate PUTC aboard Mendiola when he came on one of the posts explaining to the people something like that CUC should continue to, to come out in public so that everybody should understand when the fact, the fact goes up, what's the meaning of that? And whether if we run with our own generator, would it be less cost, or it's going to be costly, or it's less hazardous to everyone? But for me, I experience it. But who am I as a senator to tell the public? I'm not from CUC. But I experience using generator for since typhoon, and my power just came, came back maybe 3-4 days ago. And I incur a lot of issue by smelling all the generator into my house, even though it's far away when the wind changes direction. I'm smelling all those, and I know that ones it's hazardous to our health. So I emphasize, I encourage you to continue to educate our people, because this legislation came from our people, from people out there, not from us individually. We don't just draft legislation because we want to draft legislation. It's because complaint out there, and we expect CUC to be, as an expert on this field, to continue those publicity or those educate our public, because you guys are the expert on how, whether we can afford to buy the fuel, or if we don't buy the fuel, as was mentioned in the past, that CUC, even though we have the generator, CUC will not run the generator, right? That's simple common sense. It's not going to run because there's no fuel. And everybody's going to be on personal generator. And it's more costly because the cost of fuel, the cost of gasoline at gas station is, especially Saipan and Tinian and Rhoda. Us, we're paying $8 and I think 40-some cents per gallon. So those are the things I think CUC, I understand what you're trying to, trying to protect and trying to, to make sure that CUC continue to run and serve the public. But at the same time, we expect everyone to continue that kind of education to our people so that they can really understand, because a lot don't understand why it keep going up. Like I said, who am I to tell, our people that this is, I don't think they'll listen to me, because I'm just a senator. My job, they expect me to do why they put me into this office, is to help them alleviate some of the hardship. So again, I understand you guys are not in favor of this, especially in today's situation that we're having right now. But like I said, I ask that you continue that kind of public education so that everyone will completely understand. The more you educate the people, the more they're going to learn. And they're going to think that, hey, if I'm going to run, if I'm going to be on my own generator, and if that broke in about maybe a year from now, if we're still under a generator, am I going to be, can I afford to buy another one with the situation? And also in regards to everyone is under austerity. And I don't want to tell you what to do, but I think like what Mr. Chairman Angelo says, that it has to be balanced. So the people, when they know that the general government employees are under austerity, and one department is still the same, and is getting from the general public the cost of, or the fact, the ratio of fact. Of course, they're gonna continue to call us and ask, hey, why we're in this situation and the other department are in different situation where everyone is suffering. So, I don't want to tell you guys what, and I understand, maybe you understand what I'm trying to say. So I think we should be in this, like in a fair and balanced situation to be able to, to overcome all this problem. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. You know what to do. If you guys, because like I said, every single legislation here is not coming from us personally because we want to legislate and become a hero or become whatever, but because it's coming from out there, coming from our people, our constituents that are telling us that we put you into office to do something about it. So don't get us wrong that because I heard testimony earlier that, do something for CUC and for the people. That's what we're doing for the people. It's because I think it should be fair. I think it should be fair. And like I said, I know you understand where I'm coming from. So I appreciate the time, and I hope that we can, make this a fair and a balanced kind of situation, because not, like I said, we cannot be just the general public or general government employees are on austerity measure, and I know that they're coming up with another, not only austerity, maybe probably furlough. So please, let's work together on this and see what we can do to make it balanced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Senator Calvo.
Thank you, Chairman. And I would like to thank CUC, the admin and board, and also CPUC for your guys' enlightenment. The big question when we're discussing just on this Senate bill, that's Senate Bill 2402, my thoughts, because, you know, on the outer municipalities, most especially on the island of Tinian and Rota, we do have quite a few that are, and you mentioned cattle ranching, and we have the movement, you know, when we're under the COVID situation, and food security was our #1 priority when import and export and everything was shut down. So I'm reflecting on this, you know, whether CUC is willing to support us with food security in the CNMI. I know we do have, you know, through NMC and through education, we promote agriculture and, you know, the workforce, you know, how we try to diversify. And food security is very important for the Commonwealth. Should we have, you know, unstable situations like this typhoon situation, typhoon at hand. So I was thinking, you know, you have your regular residential homeowner. They consume X amount of, you know, consumption. But then again, we have quite a few cattle ranchers and livestock producers, and still in education, we're trying to promote sustainability. So this would actually be a proactive movement saying, hey, I know, Kevin, you mentioned that currently we don't have the infrastructure. X amount of years ago, we have free-flowing water. But that's realistic. But ideally, when we do get the infrastructure, I would consider this like, what is the incentive for agriculture and farming to get the young children and everybody involved? Because the consumption is at a greater mass for water. So it may not be, you know, we're not necessarily talking about lowering the rates. It would be just an ideal rate that suffices for farmers and say, hey, kids or parents or community, we can have these outdoor gardens and produce our own, you know, our own agricultural products, cash crop, livestock, where we're not burdened at the initial rate, because it's enough that the existing rate, you're always going to have a debate, you know, and there's so many uncontrollable variables, but we have to be proactive and look at the holistic approach. How can CUC help our commercial farmers, help our ranchers, help our livestock producers at a collaborative rate that will sustain us should a disaster hit again? And if we promote it that way, and how James said, you know, the economists looking at the bigger picture, even during the summer when we have drought, a lot of them are consuming a lot. So this is like ideally what we want 10, 15 years down the line, but I'm hoping that this bill does pass so it creates some sort of affordability and incentive for the farmers, and most especially when we're promoting it in the younger grades, you know, systemically. So this is part of the diversification of the economy, and if you do look, it is quite enormous on the outer islands. I've done some, what do you call it, I've hands-on, what do they call that, standpipe, you know, and eventually those are going to need to be metered, because you need to get paid also, and us, but just to come up with a reasonable rate that incentivize the productivity and build sustainability, so we have less import reduction, you know, where emergency preparedness, we have local food products that we can count on, not, you know, and we keep that resilient supply chain going. So this is a different proactive approach. And I'm hoping we can meet somewhere where we're not saying, no, we want to, we cannot do it, but I see the long-term productivity out of this bill. So if we work on it, we get the proper rates, truly that will incentivize our own sustainability in the long run. Thank you, Chairman.
Director Watson, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have an agricultural rate, but it should be set by the CPUC, not by the legislature. And it should be done systematically through studies and calculations to see the cost that it takes to produce that water. And I know recently I read about a study for farming here on the CNMI, and the farmers were asking the professor, what can we add to our crops to get a better crop? The answer was not what you can add to the water, but what's in the water now. It's high in salt content, high in chloride, that's preventing the crops to grow. What's the solution for that? There's only one solution out here, and it's costly, and that is ocean desalination. Because our chloride in our water, the more you use, the more you pump to farmers, the more we pump to our industries or our homes, the chloride level, the salt level is going to continue to rise, and it's not good for crops.
Thank you, Director. Chairman Ju?
Yeah, I mean,
Vice Chairman.
I appreciate Director Watson's guidance. I know that your expertise is water and wastewater. I do also want to push back and say that it is the utility's responsibility to make sure that we don't overpump, and that's the reason why you all go out there and track through the years, throughout the year, when is a good time to, how many gallons can you pump this time, and you restrict people from. I mean, you guys are the experts, and I'm not gonna, push back on that. And I appreciate that you flag that the salt content. I don't know. I know Rhoda is spring water, right? It's coming from the top. I know Tinian is aquifer. I'm not sure. Saipan is also aquifer, but there's that recovery mode right now for the overpumping from yesteryears. But I think it's doable. We can do it, but at the same time also encourage water catchment system to to a certain degree. I just think that we need to figure out a mechanism that is equitable for the ratepayers and for the producers and all that. That's all we're asking. We're not trying to usurp the authority of CPUC, because I actually think supported that legislation before it became law.
I heard Rhoda brought up several times, and I've been up to the cave, and all the water doesn't go to CUC. There's a lot of it, probably at least 50% or more, goes to farmers at no cost. We're not charging the farmers for that water coming out of the cave. It flows through that pipe and goes to their fields without our interference. So, but that's not Saipan and it's not Tinian, but it is very good, and they grow good crops there with that water. And, and I'm one to say that Rhoda has the best water in the Pacific. Of any Pacific island or anywhere you go, their water quality is very good. It's not high in salt content or chloride. So what I was referring to was here in Saipan.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Chair Angelo.
Mr. Executive Director, you're a water guy. I know your background. Have you ever considered Lake Susupi as a possible water source? Way back when, it was used as a water source. It's a freshwater lake, quote. I don't know how much salt has got into that lake, but the way it is not suitable drinking water, because they closed off the outlet of the lake. There were pipes that let water flow out, which lakes need, correct? Rain comes into the lake and there has to be like an out to keep the water circulating. And those drainage pipes were closed off. And I talked to Eli Cabrera Sr. a long time ago, and he said that lake could be refurbished into a source of fresh water. Have you ever given that any thought?
Yeah, I have, and there'll be substantial cost involved. One reason is because of regulatory. That would be surface water, and that falls under a whole different regulatory realm of additional testing, additional treatment, longer chlorination, a lot more complicated, because that is surface water. And we're hoping that doesn't happen to the cave in Rhoda, because that could raise the cost if the BECQ determines, because of the turbidity rising there during rain events, that it could be reclassified as groundwater under the influence of surface water. When that happens, a whole new regulatory body falls into place, and it drastically increases the price.
Would that regulation be somewhat of an over-regulation?
I cannot control the Environmental Protection Agency. It's not over-regulation. It's to protect our public's health.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to, make a comment. The committee is not approaching these measures with a predetermined outcome, and I appreciate all of you guys coming in and giving your statements. All stakeholders, including Rep. Aldan. It's important that the people hear, all sides, and our responsibilities to ensure transparency, accountability, the protection of ratepayers, and the long-term sustainability of utility services in the Commonwealth. So today's hearing is intended to gather the facts, hear all perspectives, and conduct a thorough review before making recommendations. And if there are no objections,
Chair, just one more thing before
Sure.
you excuse CUC. Can you provide fiscal impact on 2488? Just a rough estimate when you submit additional comments. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to offer that before they leave.
recognize Attorney.
Thank you. Yeah, we will try our best to do fiscal impacts on everything. I understand the chairman of CPUC didn't like my doom and gloom. I acknowledge that it would be better if we had hard data and financial numbers. So yeah, we'll try and give you that. Again, the best information you will get about CUC's finances is sitting right next to me. So we have regular board meetings the second Thursday of every month, and we're happy to provide. She provides a report to the board the second Thursday of every month. We're happy to provide that report to our regulator and any interested stakeholder. If this committee is interested, we give it to the committee, or I can send it to Antoinette. I can send a letter to the Senate President and just do one for the entire Senate. It's however that you tell me you want the information, if you in fact do want the information. But the board at its last meeting basically instructed us to provide this information to the stakeholders, not only her report, but the executive director's report as well. So, last meeting, his report was about 100 pages long, very comprehensive, and I think a lot of questions could be answered if the committee were to look at those. So would the committee like the reports to the committee, or should we send it just to the Senate President? Should I just email it informally to your council? I'm happy to do whatever the committee wants.
I think it would be beneficial, just all members of the Senate. If, there's only 9 of us.
So one email to 9, or just one to the Senate President to give to the...
Yeah, you can do that as well.
Okay.
CC the chairman too.
Thank you, sir.
I did have one question before we close. The deadline for utility scale solar, and I know that there was a court issue. How are we moving on that? Are you guys can talk about that already?
That's Ms. No's area, so I will certainly just allow her to speak. Not allow, just defer to. I'm sorry, that was very wrong. I apologize.
Is this working? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Could you ask your question again? I don't think I caught all of it.
There was someone, I guess, in regards to the procurement, there was what's the word for it? Protests, right? So I'm just concerned because like utility scale solar, like especially in terms of all the tax credits, and are we gonna be able to meet that deadline? What's the progress on? What's CUC's progress
Sure.
towards
and
that?
That's a great question, and that's a question a lot of people have been asking CUC. Because the procurement process is ongoing, and we are trying to, what's the word I always say, Kevin? We're trying to protect the integrity of the procurement process. I do try to answer high level to avoid disclosing information that's still being negotiated. For example, the contract is still being negotiated, so I couldn't give you the details of that. But the answer is, it's the same as we reported to you all last time we were here. The protester did try to freeze the solar project from moving forward, and the judge ruled on that, and the judge said, I'm not going to freeze it. CUC is allowed to move forward. The judge determined that the protester was unlikely to succeed on the merits of their case, and for that and many other reasons, Judge Lillian Tenorio said, CUC, I'm not going to freeze you. Go ahead. Do what you got to do. And she's separately going to rule on the merits of the protest itself. But CUC is allowed to proceed. In regard to your concern about the tax credits, the goal, the contractor's goal, is to have the solar farms up and running and interconnected to the CUC grid and ready to sell CUC power no later than December 31st, 2027. And if they can achieve that goal, then they will be able to get the tax credits.
Thank you. Recognize Senator Hofschneider.
I just defer, Mr. President. I'm Mr. Chairman. Similar infrastructure question, but I would defer for now, unless you insist that I say it.
Can I get a motion to?
So move.
Okay.
So move. To adjourn?
Yes. Not to adjourn, but to adjourn this part of the segment.
Okay, we'll get a motion to adjourn this part of the segment.
Okay.
So ordered.
All right. So thank you all for being here, having this open discussion. We really do appreciate it. Short recess. And we are back. If there are no objections, we'll go back to new business. And actually table everything in new business, if there's no objections.
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then moving along to old business, if we can table everything except House Bill 24-05, if there are no objections.
No objections.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question, if I may request. Like we prioritize 2434 Senate Bill, your next order, simply because of the, I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive legislation, but I think we need to seriously consider some of the fine prints of this particular legislation as it, as it pertains to its intent, what we're trying to do. But if you, if the request of the chairman is to defer everything, then I have no objection to that.
Short recess. Okay, and we're back. Vice Chair, your requests will be taken under consideration. But again, I would like to, if there's no objections, to table all bills under old business with the exception of House Bill 24-05 to establish provisions for jaywalking and for other purposes.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd like to submit or offer a substitute. I believe members were provided copies of the substitute, and what it basically does is change the penalties and just make it I believe $50 for the first offense, and then $100 for all subsequent offenses, and not have the three different tiers that was offered or proposed by the House. And so, members, if you have the copy in front of you, please take the time to review it. If there's no further amendments, I would like to motion to amend House Bill 24-5 and offer Senate Substitute 1.
A second. It's been under discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion on House Bill or the motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may be recognized, please.
Recognize Senator Hofschneider.
Thank you for this. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this amendment. I do appreciate that 40% of this goes to the general fund, but in a sense, the other percentage that is broken down is literally going towards like a earmarking per se, based on that. So is that the intent of our action today, is to earmark some of these? Are we okay with that? Okay, so if that is the case, I yield back. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if it's I'm in order, but because this thing is gonna go directly to the agencies, perhaps in a some sort of a reporting requirement, or unless we trust that the legislature will be asking for or a fund status for all these figures in should this become law. So I'm okay if that is the sentiment of the group, but given the nature of the distribution of it, I think it's important to at least have like a reporting requirement on the use. It's not too much to ask. Thank you.
Duly noted, Vice Chair. But if enforced correctly, I think this account, I don't think it's gonna be it shouldn't be I mean, if it's actually enforced, it's not an account where it's gonna require a big report.
Okay, if that's the desire of the chairman, and I'm in conformance with your direction, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Ronnie M. Calvo,
Yes.
Senator Jude U. Hofschneider,
Good.
Senator Donald M. Manglonia,
Yes.
Senator Manny Gregory T. Castro.
Ungan.
Mr. Chairman, the 4 members present voted yes.
So can I get a motion to adopt House Bill 24-5, House Draft 1, SS1?
There's and I so move to adopt House Bill 24-5 HD1 as amended.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. House Bill 24, the committee report for House Bill 24-5, House Draft 1, Senate Substitute 1, hereby passes. Moving on to miscellaneous. Recognize Senator Manglonia.
Thank you, Chairman. In light of the testimonies that were given today, as well as the discussions we've had with the invited guests, I think that, Mr. Chairman, if you can follow up with these entities to provide the information that we've requested in order to move forward with some of the legislations that was tabled, I think it's important for us to address the concerns that were brought forth by the stakeholders, as well as discuss amongst the committee members if we are going to consider any of these amendments, particularly on the two bills that were the main topics of today's discussion, which is House Bill 2487 and 2488. And so, in addition to the Vice Chair's request of marking up 2434 at our next committee meeting, I also hope that we can get answers and reports from CUC and PUC on additional information that was requested on House Bill 2487 and 88. Also, I've requested, in regards to Senate Bill 2402, that CUC considers the proposal of having maybe a cap on water rates for farmers and commercial ranchers, to consider the rate that is proposed by the author, but also through a law that's already in place and that CUC has failed to implement. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think maybe if you can communicate with CUC to find out a time where it's best to meet to mark up these bills, I would appreciate any of the information be shared with us prior to the meeting. I know they did mention that they are quite busy next week, and so hopefully this is something that we can address maybe before the end of the month or early into July. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Manglonia, for I'll take that into consideration, and I also given, especially in regards to Senate Bill 24-34, I feel like we would need to do a little bit more public outreach beyond just CUC and the CPUC, but members of our community on all three senatorial districts as well. Any other discussions? With that, we're moving on to the adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded with thank you. And without objection, this meeting for the Senate Committee on Public Utilities, Transportation and Communications is hereby adjourned.